What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And over the weekend, there were some really interesting New York Giants topics and reports that came about, some of them indicating what the Giants' draft plans might be, some trades that they might be considering, some players that they might have opinions on in the upcoming NFL draft, and more recently as well, we want to dive into this topic first and foremost. The topic of the price tag for the number one overall pick came up. And if you guys didn't see, the Tennessee Titans, according to many reports and straight from the horse's mouth, they are looking to trade the number one overall pick. They're very much considering moving down. The situation with the Titans is very interesting. They hold the number one pick in the draft, and I believe that's the only top 100 pick that they hold in this year's draft. I don't think they have a second or third, so they're looking to trade down and add some additional draft capital, particularly on day two of this year's draft. And if you take a look at the recent history of trades for the number one overall pick, or just first round trades in general that are only one or two spots, the Giants are actually positioned in a way where, picking number 3 overall, they could move to number 1 overall for a relatively affordable cost. It probably won't cost them a future first, maybe not even a future second round draft pick. And if that's the case, should the Giants consider making an offer to the Titans to move up to the first overall pick? So Jordan Rannon of ESPN, he kind of dove into the history of picks or trades for the number one overall pick, and we'll kind of discuss that real quickly here and talk about what that price tag might look like for the New York Giants and whether or not we would be willing to make that trade, plus who for, obviously, in my opinion, Cam Ward, Miami quarterback. I think he's the number one quarterback in this draft class. So, Alex, before we dive into the wide array of topics that we have to discuss in today's episode, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the projected day two draft picks price tag for that number one overall pick?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And yeah, that's a really interesting kind of nugget that Jordan Rodden dropped, or really just a question. A lot of people said no. And you guys know I've been on the side of I don't want to give up future draft capital for, move up to first overall. But I'm talking predominantly about future first round picks, future second round, this year's second round pick. If all we have to give is this year's third and next year's third, I'm willing to do that because if you have conviction in a quarterback, and I know a lot of people are saying this quarterback class sucks, they're not good, this and that. I get it, I understand, but the truth is that you just never know. I'm not going to write the story before it's been written. And ultimately, this is kind of a situation where I think that Cam Ward does have that level of upside that if we have to give up 2 third-round picks this year, next year, you might even get a comp pick at some point to get a third back, if they play their cards right. I do think that if you're the Giants, you walk away with the guy that you wanted, the guy that you can build around, the guy that you foresee as potentially having that all-pro upside. Now, the question is, if they have that type of conviction in one of the quarterbacks, I don't know who that would be, you go get him at 1. If for 2 third-round picks, if you have that level of conviction, you trade up and get him at 1. It's an easy decision, in my opinion. The problem is, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is. I don't think you need to trade up to get him at 1. Personally, I think he's going to be there at 3. Cam Ward, I'm not so sure. I think Sanders will be there at 3. But again, a lot of teams, if you have conviction in a player, you're not going to run that risk. You're going to trade some mid-level draft picks, and you're going to go get the player that you want. So even if it is Sanders, I'm not the guy making the decision, but I get why if they do have that much conviction in, which would surprise me at this point. I like him, just not that much. I think that they're going to do it. I think that they would trade up to get him because they're desperate. They need to do this. They want to get their guy. They believe he's the future. They believe he can be the present. So that could be a move the Giants make. Now, Anthony, what do you think about that? I think 2 third-round picks, yeah, going from 3 to 1, I would do that if they have conviction in a guy they really, really like. Otherwise, you stick and pick at 3 if you don't feel that highly about the guy that you're really targeting.
Listen, I think, conviction is the word that you use there, and I think that's the most important word whenever you're drafting in the top 5 picks of the NFL draft, especially when you're searching for a franchise quarterback. We've, read all of the reports and updated you guys on all of them as they've come in, and it sounds like, according to the speculation and just kind of reading what's been out there, the Giants have a conviction in Shedeur Sanders is how it appears. So if they feel like Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback 1 in this class, and that's the guy that they want to draft, there's 2 ways of looking at this. He probably will be there at number 3 overall, so you stick and pick and you take him there. Or the other way of looking at it is, we can't guarantee anything in the NFL draft. We can't guarantee that he will be there for the number 3 overall pick, so we better trade up to number 1 and make sure that we hold our own destiny in our hands. And I think there is an argument for that if the price tag is right, even if it's Shedeur Sanders. Now, for me personally, I would trade up to the number 1 overall pick for Cam Ward. But I wanted to bring Sanders into this conversation because we don't know who the Giants QB1 is. Consensus QB1 is Cam Ward, but we've seen in the past that teams can go against the grain and they can have a different quarterback at the top of their draft board that's, varying from the rest of the consensus. And if that's the case, and if the Giants have Shedeur as their number one quarterback in this class, they still have a difficult time ahead of them trying to determine, will he be available for us with the number 3 overall pick, or do we need to make a move to guarantee that we get our guy, whether that's Cam, whether that's Shedeur, whoever it is. And then it comes down to the price tag. Are the Giants willing to move mountains in order to land their number one quarterback, or are they willing to pay with a price ceiling? Now, if you don't remember, last offseason, Alex, the Giants had a price limit in terms of trades for the number 1, 2, or 3 overall pick. They explored trading up into the top 3. We know for sure that they had heavy negotiations with the New England Patriots up until hours before the NFL draft. The problem was the Giants had a limit on how much they were willing to pay to trade up to the number 3 overall pick. Now, in retrospect, it doesn't look like the Patriots were ever seriously considering trading down unless they got blown away by a contract offer, or a trade offer, rather. The problem is, I don't think the Giants were willing to blow them away with their offer. They had a price limit. So now it becomes a question of, will there be a price limit this time around now that the Giants do not have a quarterback on their roster and are in dire need of a franchise quarterback? Does that limit increase, or does it stay the same? Does it even lower because this quarterback class isn't as good? These are all the questions that we're going to have about the New York Giants that the Giants themselves need to determine the answers to between now and April. How much are they willing to pay for the number 1 overall pick, if they're willing to pay at all? Do they just want to stick and pick at number 3? Do they make a trade with their draft capital for a quarterback prior to the NFL draft? Because this is the other part of the report from Jordan Rannon, Alex, that I found really eye-opening. He mentioned in this report, I want to read the quote, make sure that I get it right. So he mentioned in this article that the New York Giants are, quote, on the hunt. So, quote, it's no secret that the Giants are scouring the landscape for their future franchise quarterback. One NFL executive said general manager Joe Schoen made it obvious at the Senior Bowl that was his focus, end quote. And so I want to give my takeaway to that quote, Alex, that part of the report here, because I think a lot of people will read that and say, okay, Shane made it obvious at the Senior Bowl that he was looking at quarterbacks. So then you think, oh, so he was really heavily scouting Jackson Dart. Could the Giants be really into Jackson Dart? Maybe Jalen Milroe, maybe Dylan Gabriel? Those were the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. I had a different thought on this. The fact that he was scouring the landscape and made it obvious that he was searching for a franchise quarterback at the Senior Bowl didn't make it obvious to me that he was scouting Jackson Dart. It makes it obvious to me that he's going around speaking to every GM and front office executive member that he can, trying to find a trade partner to land a franchise quarterback elsewhere. That's what I think that indicates, because if you guys remember from Hard Knocks last year, it really gave us a peek behind the curtain, and we really got to see the process that Joe Schoen goes through pre-draft. And what we saw was during the Senior Bowl, he did a lot of conversating with the different general managers at the Senior Bowl to find a trade that he liked the best. And that's where the Brian Burns trade negotiations began. Because while he was just kind of joking around with Panthers general manager Dan Morgan, he mentioned, oh, what would you guys like to give us 3 first-round picks to trade up to the number 6 overall pick? He was just joking with Dan Morgan. Dan Morgan goes, no, we don't want to do that. But you can give us 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. That told general manager Joe Schoen that Brian Burns was on the trade block. And that is how we got to the point months later, or just a month later, when the Giants traded for Brian Burns. They circled back, found out what the true price tag was, because it wasn't the 2 first-round picks, and got a deal done. So you have to imagine, if Joe Schoen made it obvious, according to this report, that he was looking for a franchise quarterback at the Senior Bowl, he probably didn't make it obvious that he was scouting Jackson Dart the whole time he was there. Everybody was scouting Jackson Dart while he was there. He probably made it obvious that he's willing to do whatever he can to get a quarterback, including making trades to land his franchise quarterback. So you could think of this, if you want, Alex, you can connect this to the Matthew Stafford rumors and dot connecting that people have been doing. If we're taking this line of logic that Joe Schoen was trying to gauge trade interest in quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, Matt Stafford's obviously going to come up. So are other quarterbacks who could potentially be on the trade block. Derek Carr, name your pick. However, it also could indicate, especially considering this was attached to an article, Alex, that discussed trading up for the number 1 overall pick, my guess would be that Joe Schoen probably spoke to the Titans and asked them what their price tag is for that number 1 overall pick, and therefore made it obvious, according to the report, that he is on the hunt for a franchise quarterback. That's what I think happened at the Senior Bowl. I know that I'm jumping to conclusions and speculating, but piecing all the different information that we've gathered over the last 365 days together, Alex, to me, this report seems like coded language to indicate the Giants at least reached out to the Titans at the Senior Bowl for a trade to the number 1 overall pick. That's my takeaway from it. I don't know if you have a different interpretation of this report, but again, piecing everything together, that's how I view it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the truth is the Giants canvassing the landscape for a franchise quarterback, is that really a surprise? They need a franchise quarterback. Like it's the obvious move. If they weren't doing that, I'd be really pissed, really concerned. Now the question is, how did it get leaked? Who leaked it? You know, obviously at the Senior Bowl, like you mentioned before, the Brian Burns trade, Joe Schoen, he likes to gather information, you know, see who's available. Could that be a Matthew Stafford thing? Who knows? It's a stretch. It could be any variety of things. It could be asking another team what their plan is. What are the Titans going to do? You know, what's your plan? Are you guys going to sign a free agent? Are you guys going to get a draft? Like trying to poke and prod, see the responses are. You know, trying to figure out what this situation is. Now, you know, you mentioned Stafford. I don't label him a franchise quarterback for the Giants because he's only going to be a 2-year really stopgap. He's a Band-Aid. You know, he's not a franchise quarterback for the Giants. The Giants need a long-term sustainable success, and the draft offers you the best chance at achieving that unless you go with a bridge or something like that and try to hit on a guy with upside, maybe like a Justin Fields. I don't know. A lot of Jets fans really want the Jets to get Justin Fields, and really interesting kind of situation developing there too. But, you know, the Giants, they are in the market for a franchise quarterback. But what is the definition of a franchise quarterback to you, Anthony? Is it a Stafford? Is it a stopgap like a Russell Wilson? Do you label that kind of guy a franchise quarterback? Or do you label them as a Band-Aid? Do you label them as a stopgap? Do you label them as a short-term solve? Because franchise quarterback to me means long-term investment, means long-term sustainability. That's what that means to me. Can we find our franchise quarterback? A guy that is your face of your franchise for a long period of time. That's what my definition would be. But based on my definition, it suggests what you're saying, and that they're probably asking the Titans, hey, what do you want for the first overall pick? You know, what do you want for that selection so we can get our franchise quarterback? That's kind of what that says to me, along what you were saying before, but maybe you have a different definition.
I think it's very difficult to define what a franchise quarterback is and I know he's always the exception to the rule, but I'm going to bring him up anyway because I think it's the closest comparison. When 43-year-old Tom Brady left the New England Patriots and signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 3-year contract, they absolutely viewed him as their franchise quarterback, and he won them a Super Bowl as their franchise quarterback, even though he was only there for 3 years, which is what you just mentioned for Matt Stafford. He'd be with the Giants for 2, maybe 3 seasons, most likely. He's 37 years old. We have to imagine he probably retires by the time he's 40, so the Giants probably get 3 years out of Matt Stafford. However, if this roster were positioned to win right now, would we not view Matt Stafford as a legitimate franchise quarterback for the Giants over the next couple of years? We absolutely would. The problem is, do the Giants have the environment to plug and play a veteran like that and determine him to be their franchise quarterback? I'm not necessarily sure. As I went on my rant a couple episodes ago, Alex, when we discussed Matt Stafford, Giants have a whole lot of needs. I think there's at least 10 position groups out of the 22 that start for you that need an upgrade this offseason for the New York Giants. Like, just bona fide upgrades across the board. The Giants need as many as they can get. Their roster is very far from being among the best in the NFC, let alone the NFL. The AFC is a powerhouse. The NFC, I think you could argue the 2 best teams in the NFC reside in the New York Giants division with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, and the Giants aren't really close to competing with either of those teams right now. So all of that in consideration, can you determine as the Giants GM that Matt Stafford is a franchise quarterback for your roster? Because what do I always say, Alex? Situation is everything, especially at the quarterback position. Matt Stafford, for the Los Angeles Rams, who have Pro Bowlers on both sides of the ball, elite playmakers in the weaponry, great defensive pieces, he's a franchise quarterback for them. But for the New York Giants, who have a bunch of injuries on both sides of the ball and really only one true playmaker on offense and, a couple of good pieces on defense, I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback for them. So again, it depends on your definition of the term, but I also think it depends on the situation. I think Jaden Daniels immediately established himself as a franchise quarterback for the Washington Commanders because they put a good situation in place for him. Had he been drafted by the New York Giants at number 6 overall, and the Giants, all things remained constant, still had all of those injuries, didn't have Malik Neighbors in this situation, he might not have looked like a franchise quarterback in the first season of his career because the situation might have held him back, even though in this other situation with Washington, he flourished. So I think situation is everything. So I really can't say, is Matt Stafford a franchise quarterback for the New York Giants? I would say he probably isn't because they don't have that win now roster that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had when they signed Tom Brady at 43 years old. So I think that's the most, recent comparison. Actually, I'd even add another. Aaron Rodgers could have been a franchise quarterback for the Jets if they had a better situation. But they had problems in the coaching staff. They had problems on the roster. So unfortunately, they weren't able to create a situation that allowed him to flourish as a franchise quarterback. I fear that the New York Giants trading for Matt Stafford would not be similar to the Buccaneers signing Tom Brady, would be similar to the Jets trading for Aaron Rodgers because of the situation. And again, situation is everything to me for quarterback. So a franchise quarterback with one team is a franchise quarterback, with another team he's not a franchise quarterback. And again, it all has to do with situation. Sam Darnold being another example, Baker Mayfield being another example. These guys had to find new situations in order to finally flourish in their careers. Other guys go to new situations and they become held back as prisoners of a situation. And again, because of the New York Giants situation, Matt Stafford to me is not a long-term solution or even short-term solution because the Giants roster isn't close enough to compete with the Eagles and Commanders in my opinion, though some others might have a different opinion, might think the Giants are closer to competing than I do and therefore view Stafford as a franchise quarterback. However, that's the last piece of info that I want to bring up on this topic, Alex, and I want to get your take on this. At the bye week, Joe Schoen said something very eye-opening and, in the hearts of many Giants fans, almost infuriating. He said, we're not that far off. He said, we're close. He used up the stats. The Giants lost a lot of one-score games. Their rookie draft class was phenomenal. He made all these different comparisons. Oh, Saquon's gone, but Tyrone Tracy Jr. is leading rookie running backs in rushing yards. These are all the things that he said. Do you think he views Matt Stafford because of that, do you think he views Matt Stafford as a franchise quarterback because he believes that the Giants are close?
If he believes that the Giants are close, we have a lot of big problems, dude. If he thinks that the Giants are even remotely in the same realm as some of these better competitive teams, we're the fourth best team in the NFC East right now. Close to what? What are we close to? Dallas is going to get the wild card before us. The Commanders get the wild card before us. We're talking about the Giants have little to no depth, let alone starting talent, right? We don't have a right guard. Our center's not developing. We don't have a WR2. Our slot receiver's tiny and he has one more year left until he's a free agent. We don't have a strong safety. We have a slew of youth. We don't have a cornerback 1. We don't have a DT2. Kayvon's been disappointing as a pro. We don't have a quarterback. Our running back's a 5th-round sophomore who I really like Tyrone Tracy, but I want to see him take another step forward. We don't have a proven tight end. And that's just the starters. I'm not even talking about wide receiver depth or linebacker depth or cornerback depth or defensive depth or pass rush depth. We're talking about just the starters. And we're not going to fall for this again, Anthony. I think the fans, too, you guys are in the same boat as us. We're not falling for this BS anymore, that we're close. That's why I am out on Stafford, because we're not close. Stafford's going to get you 7 wins, maybe. He's never played outside of a dome. He's 37 years old. He wants another small contract extension, which for a player of that caliber, 50 mil probably for a season for him. Anthony, you probably agree with that. 50 mil for Stafford for a year is probably realistic. What or why? You know what I mean? So that's kind of why I see we're not close. We are not close. We need to draft a rookie, get a 1-year stopgap, and then prepare to invest a lot of money around that rookie. And like you said, you said situation was a great word. Love that word you used. Because honestly, you're right. Depending on what situation you are, franchise quarterback can mean different things. For the Giants, franchise quarterback means getting a rookie, developing that player, and giving him every single possibility to succeed. Reinvesting in your offensive line, reinvesting in your receivers, getting good coaches, paying those coaches to stay. Those are the things that define the future of a young player. not going and getting a veteran that's going to do what for you exactly? Miss the playoffs anyway? Is that what we're aiming for, to miss the playoffs but have a couple more wins? Is that our goal really? Are we down that bad? I think that we're already down bad enough, man. Like, having a rookie quarterback, I can root for that. Like, I can rally and root. If a rookie quarterback struggles, I expect that. But I just want to see progress. I can root for a rookie that's struggling because we're seeing development and growth. I'm okay with that. I think you guys would be too, to be honest.
Yeah, I would love to see a rookie quarterback struggle and develop. That's what I've been wanting to see for years. But okay, so a couple things that you said there that I want to touch on and get your initial rebuttal take before we move into some of these other quick hitting topics. So you said investing in this rookie quarterback, right? So there's two ways of looking at an investment for a rookie quarterback. If the Giants take a rookie quarterback, they're investing the number 3 overall pick into him, and then they're investing other pieces around him. However, if they trade 2 third-round picks or a third and a second to move up to number 1 overall and take that rookie quarterback, they're now investing 3 draft picks into that rookie quarterback and sacrificing other investments to make around that rookie quarterback. How much closer would the Giants actually be if they trade those extra picks to get the franchise quarterback? I want to get your take on that real quick, because do you think that trading those third-round picks to get the rookie quarterback makes the Giants instantly closer? Or do you think that sticking and picking, taking the best player available at 3, whether that's a quarterback or not, and using the other draft capital to invest in those other areas of weakness and signing a stopgap bridge quarterback, does that make you closer? That's what I think the New York Giants need to determine, and I am curious to get your take on that. What actually makes the Giants closer? Which of those 2 investments makes them closer?
Yeah, I mean, I'll paint the picture this way. Let's look at the projected impact of a third-round pick. I have no numbers, but just general consensus. This is pretty easy to say. Most third-round picks do not pan out. I would say that's a pretty accurate statement. Most third-round picks do not pan out, at least to become above-average starters or even average starters at the NFL level. Starters in general.
I would say you expect them to become starters eventually. I think in the 3rd round, you're expected for guys to eventually become starters, not instant impact starters. If you're drafting for an instant impact starter in the 3rd round, like the Giants tried to do with Cordell Flott and Josh Zito, you're asking to get burned. But I do think that you expect them to eventually contribute at some point. So that would be my take on the 3rd round prospect.
Yeah, you expect them to. Does that mean they actually do? Obviously, it depends on the team. If you're the Eagles, they become all-stars. If you're the Giants, they become no stars. And that's kind of the reality for us. But, what my point here is that if you send the 3rd-round picks on your way, you might be able to get one in a comp pick back anyway. Maybe you trade back in next year's draft in the 1st round if you have a good opportunity. You have a quarterback already. You recoup some lost draft capital. You could always theoretically make that up. But my point more so is the financial kind of benefits of getting the quarterback now, right? Because if you spend a 3rd-round pick on a player with the Giants situation, let's talk about our situation, the likelihood of them panning out is low. We've seen it, and the statistics show it. So assuming that be the case, and you decide not to go the route of going up and getting your quarterback, you have to spend more on a bridge. You have to spend more. Maybe you want to trade for someone. You're spending $30, $40, $50 million on this bridge quarterback over a year, 2 years, when you could just draft the quarterback at a cheaper bridge and then turn that page over in 2026 and you have $120 million to spend. And the money that you're saving by going and getting your quarterback, your rookie quarterback who's on this rookie deal now, the money you're saving is going to make up that 3rd-round pick 10 times over. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, you sent a 3rd-round pick, but, you're going to be able to spend $20 million on a starting, star offensive guard, on a star WR2. It's not even going to cost you $20 million on a WR2. You can go get the best cornerback on the market, the best pass rusher on the market. That's what that money allows you to do. It allows you to be a lot more proactive, a lot more aggressive in free agency to get players that make you better now, and not just players, proven commodities, right? The Giants cannot develop talent well. That has been an unfortunate reality for us. Sending 2 third-round picks is a drop in the bucket because the financial implications of that on the back end are going to be a lot more impactful for this team in filling holes around, like I said, building around this young quarterback, investing in the offensive line financially, investing in a WR2 to pair with Malik Neighbors to make sure that Neighbors, not just a quarterback, but Neighbors has a long, successful career, that he is not overwhelmed with targets and killed by week 6. You know what I mean? That's where the Giants are headed with this kid. They're gonna run him to the ground because he's their only weapon. So they need to find, and that's why this rookie quarterback deal is so imperative to the equation, because it allows you to maximize neighbors. It allows you to reinforce your offensive line. It allows you to do other things. And you still have all your draft picks, right? You don't have to mortgage your future. Third round picks, you're not mortgaging your future. You're mortgaging a shot in the dark, really, because that's what third round picks are. They're shots in the dark. Anything after the second round, to me, is a shot in the dark. You either hit or you don't. You know what I mean? Like, it's black and white. You know, you can develop them, but most of the time, it's not going to work out, at least the way that you hope. So, you know, I do believe that third round picks, I'm willing to do that to go get Cam Ward at 1. Second round picks, first round picks, I'd probably hesitate. First round picks, I'm definitely not doing in this draft class. But third round picks, I'm absolutely willing to take that gamble because they're already such low probabilities of hitting. So really, I'm just playing the probability game and the financial game on the back end. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Because the Giants can't afford to not pull the trigger on a deal like that. You know, a third round pick, so you pull the trigger to get a quarterback you have conviction in. So I do think if that is an option, if they have to give up this year's third and next year's third to go get Cam Ward or Sanders, whoever they love, I mean, you know what my preference is, but like it's not my decision. The guy that they love, they should do that, right? They should absolutely do that. Now the question is, are the Titans going to get suckered into making a deal like that? Because I feel like they could probably get more from somebody else. But you know, with that being said, I mean, if the Raiders
in this draft class personally,
if the Raiders want to move up to
Raiders,
1, they could give up. Yeah. They can get a second and a third, probably maybe 2 seconds. Honestly,
are you actually getting more if you're moving down to 6 and missing out on Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham? So
that's a great point.
I don't think the Titans would be willing to move down. It was kind of similar conversation to the one that we had about the Patriots last year. You know, Giants picking at 6. Well, if they move down to 6, they'd still be able to land Malik Neighbors, the Patriots would. But if they move down to 10, where the Minnesota Vikings were, they miss out on all those top wide receivers. So it's the same thing. And that's why, you know, ultimately the Patriots decided to stick and pick, but only entertain the potential deal with the Giants, you know, and that's why I think, of course, the Giants now picking at 3 have a chance to get to 1. In my opinion, I'll just clarify my take here. I'm throwing those two third round picks away to the Titans and taking the franchise quarterback that I like best. But you guys know how I feel. I'm throwing darts at the board. I'm investing in the quarterback position. I'm investing multiple picks into the quarterback position. I want a quarterback, and I want to take a chance on a quarterback more than anything. So that's my take on it. I'm trying my best to get that franchise quarterback, whether I'm dying for it by trading up, you know, and sacrificing mid-round picks. Sure, whatever. Get me my franchise quarterback. For me, that's Cam. I also do like Shedeur. Whichever one the Giants take, if they do trade up to number 1 overall, I will root for, but I won't be married to. If he sucks after a year, screw it. Move on from the GM, move on from the coach. Just draft another one. You guys know my take on it, and I've made this take abundantly clear in the past. But Alex, moving on to some of these more quick-hitting topics that we have from this New York Post article via Paul Schwartz that we wanted to discuss. We just mentioned Shedeur Sanders. There is an excerpt from this New York Post article that I want to read out and get your take on, Alex. So, Paul Schwartz wrote the following. There is no doubt the Giants are intrigued with Shedeur Sanders. They will explore the dynamic with his famous father, Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders. There is a concern that Shedeur has been coached by his father since high school, and the Giants saw firsthand the video-centric, everything gets documented ecosystem created at Colorado and the spotlight that both father and son seem to crave. If, for instance, the Giants lose their first 2 games with Shedeur as the rookie starter, does Deion send missives from Boulder questioning the offensive line or a dropped pass or the play calling? This all has to be explored as deeply as possible. Other than possible questions about his body type, he does not exactly look like a physical specimen. There do not seem to be many serious issues with Cam Ward. So that excerpt I thought was really interesting and a little bit eye-opening from Paul Schwartz of the New York Post, once again, pretty much indicating that the Giants are doing their due diligence here, trying to figure out if Deion Sanders is going to be a problem in regards to drafting Shedeur Sanders. Now, Alex, I know that you have made it abundantly clear that that is a concern of yours. You have expressed that concern that you personally have with Deion Sanders and his influence over his son and his ability to manipulate the spotlight many times. So what is your take now reading from Paul Schwartz of the New York Post that the Giants have that same concern as you and are doing their due diligence to explore what the impact of Deion Sanders would be on Shedeur Sanders through this pre-draft process?
I think that's partially why they were at his practices this year. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of why I've been so, you know, the Sanders media attention has been manufactured by his whole team this whole time. The Giants have said nothing about anybody. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they've had a couple dap ups. It's been fun. We've joked about it, and I've tweeted, "Oh yeah, Sanders is gonna be a Giant," in jest. But the truth is, the Giants went to the Colorado practice. They went to a couple games, talked to Deion, tried to gather information about his influence on his son and what he's going to be like in the NFL and his influence in the NFL. If, he's going to have his 2 cents on social media if things aren't going well. You know what I mean? These are things you have to uncover. And all that stuff, the Brandon Brown being at the practice, Joe Shane being at the practice, Colorado posted it on their freaking team account. You know what I mean? Shedeur Sanders is being followed around by a cameraman for his podcast all the time, and it's being broadcasted on social media every single time something happens. That, he made Giants cleats. The Giants didn't give him Giants cleats. He made them himself. You know what I mean? Like, this is a production. And I think that people are getting, like, confused by this whole thing is, like, this is a production from the Sander team about the whole draft process, right? What he's going through. Like, we saw him in a clip telling, like Sanders saying this is ridiculous because he's a freaking camera guy couldn't follow him into a room with the teams. We saw it at the Shrine Bowl. Right? Anthony, I don't know if you recall that video, but he was upset about it. We were like, what the hell? That was weird. You know what I mean? And like, it's nothing, right? Like, it's not a big deal. I'm just saying, like, oh, it's just strange. Like, it's just this whole production around him is odd. You don't see many players experience this type of stuff, like, or have this type of, like, whole aura around them that's, like, all about this. I mean, he had a music video drop the other day. Like, he's got a lot of other stuff going on that's not just football. It's a podcast, it's a music, it's this, and that's totally fine. Guys can have their hobbies. I don't give a shit about that personally, But what I'm trying to say is the information they're trying to gather about Sanders is justified because there's a lot of extracurricular stuff that he does, that is, like, nothing to do with the Giants. Nothing to do with their success. Nothing to do with them. It's the cameras. It's the music. It's this and that. Getting to the bottom of all of it. Are you in love with the game? Do you love football? Is this your first love? Or is music your first love? Like Kadarius Toney was trying to make rap songs the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, not to say they're similar because they're obviously not. But more so, like, he's got a whole other life to him. Shedeur Sanders, and is his father, how involved is he going to be at the NFL level? These are all questions that teams are asking themselves. Like, you think I'm being negative about Sanders? I'm being realistic, guys. This is what teams asking. This is what the Giants are asking themselves right now. How included is his dad going to be? Why does he always have cameras following him? Why is he making music videos during the draft process? These are all things that the teams are asking themselves when they're looking at prospects. Like, if you want to ignore that fact, that's on you. But that's just the truth. You know what I mean? If this guy is going to be your face of your franchise, the future of the most important position on your team, you have to know the ins and outs of everything about him. So this is the stuff that I've been trying to bring up for months, and people said I was negative, but now we're seeing the Giants are doing it in real time, which is smart. By the way, it's a really smart because we've seen them make dumb draft picks before. Guys really weren't in love with football. And I think that he is. I think that Shedeur Sanders loves football. I don't think that that's a concern for me. He grew up loving the game. He grew up, it's in his blood. You know what I mean? So I'm not concerned about his love for the sport by any means. I just think that doing your due diligence is of the utmost importance, and the Giants are doing that. And if they weren't doing that, I'd be really freaking scared because that means they are literally taking a shot in the dark with no information. You know what I mean? Anthony, I think that's a pretty fair assessment personally. I'm just talking to you guys the way the teams are probably talking to themselves and just uncovering every stone to make sure that they don't run into something they didn't anticipate after they draft a guy.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you on some of these points. I don't necessarily fully agree on my feelings towards some of the things that we've reacted to. You know me, I have a little bit less concern about Deion than you do. You have more concern over the spotlight and the aura, like you said, and all the attention that Shedeur and Deion get. It doesn't concern me as much, but I do think it is something, as you said, and as we've both said, that the Giants need to research, do their due diligence on, and find out how concerned they might be with the whole situation. So there's a lot for them to dive into. Again, we only get limited access to all of this stuff because we are not in the front office of the New York Giants and we don't get to talk to Shedeur and Deion and all that. However, yes, this is something that the Giants do need to explore, and they will explore. So some of the other topics, Alex, quick hitting before we wrap this thing up, that were explained in this article from the New York Post. It is believed the Giants at this point view Jackson Dart as the number 3 quarterback in this class. That was the direct quote from the article. I don't think there's too much to take away from that. Good. We view him as the number 3 quarterback in this draft class. Most people do. It just sounds to me like the Senior Bowl really solidified that in the eyes of the New York Giants and probably in the eyes of everyone else around the NFL. And then the other quote that I found interesting from this article, Alex, was about Abdul Carter. So this ties into the episode that I did solo a couple days ago talking about Kayvon Thibodeau, the 5th-year option that the Giants have. It was the same article that mentioned that the Giants are leaning towards picking up that 5th-year option on Abdul Carter, or I'm sorry, on Kayvon Thibodeau. And the kind of the storyline here would be, do they view Kayvon Thibodeau as a long-term player for them? Is he somebody that they're going to extend, or is Abdul Carter going to make more sense for them in the long run? Because this is the quote from Paul Schwartz. It is certainly plausible that the Penn State edge rusher, Abdul Carter, will end up as the number one prospect on the Giants draft board. Yes, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau are returning as starters. No, that would not eliminate Carter as an option for the Giants. All three could play at the same time. If Thibodeau is not on the team after the 2026 season, that will leave Carter and Burns signed through 2028 as a dynamic duo. I thought that was a pretty interesting excerpt, Alex. I want to get your take on it. My feelings towards this. You take the best player available. The Giants, even though they have Thibodeau and Burns, should not eliminate Carter from their draft board. Even if they had Darrelle Revis in his prime and Joe Hayden in his prime, screw it. Travis Hunter is still on the draft board. I'm a BPA guy. So this is welcome news to me that the Giants are, if they are going BPA, are not taking guys off their board due to positions of strengths for the Giants, because the Giants truly have a bad roster, don't have strengths anywhere. Even their best players. You have to have depth, and you have to add and stack talent. That's how the best NFL teams create long, sustainable success for the future. So that's my full takeaway from this excerpt, but I'm curious to hear what yours is.
I mean, Abdul Carter has Michael Parsons' upside. The guy's a freak, and he's pretty raw at the position and so advanced already. Like, his upside is that big, that good. The truth is that the Giants don't have the luxury. If they don't like the quarterbacks in this draft and they want to go with a guy like Russ or whatever, trade for somebody, Abdul Carter could absolutely be number one. I mean, Travis Hunter could be number one. Like, it could be vice versa. It's A and B. You just pick one and you hope for the best because they're both that talented. Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau's not stopping me from drafting Abdul Carter, dude. Like, I'm picking up Kayvon's fifth-year option because it's the right thing to do. And if you don't, you let Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau go after you drafted both of them in the first round, then both of them declining their fifth-year option. That is a fireable offense, Anthony. Fireable offense to decline both fifth-year options on 2 top 8 picks in one draft class. Like, it's tremendously malpractice if you do that. Joe Schoen has to save some face. That is part of it. They're going to pick up Kayvon's fifth-year option. And Kayvon's not a bad player. He's just an inconsistent player. And he's the type of player that goes to a team like the Eagles and dominates and puts on a show and figures it all out. The problem is the Giants turn their coaching staff over every season. Shane Bowen, the Wilkins brothers, Wink Martindale. How many guys do we have to churn through before we get some level of consistency, right? Like, that's the question. Kayvon Thibodeau's had 4 different coaches in 4 years, right? How many different position coaches, name them. It's just it's a devastating way to develop players. Why do you think Evan Neal's so bad? Why do you think Kayvon's not reached his potential? Why do you think Deonte Banks is regressing? You know what I mean? Why do you think Jalen Hyatt's basically a non-factor? The Giants do not have coaches that stick around and develop players properly. Kayvon Thibodeau will go to a more structured team and be good. I have no doubt about it. The Giants need to extend him because they know that to be the case. They not extend him, but they got to pick up the fifth-year option because they know if he goes elsewhere and he leaves in free agency, he's going to be better. He's going to have a better career somewhere else. Also, you have to pick up his fifth-year option because you don't know if you're going to draft Abdul Carter. You know what I mean? You don't know if you're going to end up taking a guy like that. So and also, like you said, having depth is imperative. If you end up getting Carter, those 2 guys can play at the same time, and you have one of the strongest pass rush groups in the game now. Right, you actually have a strength. God forbid the Giants have one position that's of strength. I think you obviously have to do that. You have to pick up the fifth-year option because worst case comes to worst, like, he ends up becoming your third pass rusher, and that's an embarrassment of riches, in my opinion, if you have Carter there. So, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm picking up the fifth-year option because there's a lot of reasons for Joe Schoen to do it, and there's a lot of reasons that the Giants can't afford to watch another player go elsewhere and succeed. So the only other alternative is if you draft Carter and then you trade Kayvon for some decent draft capital. That's the only other alternative I could foresee happening, but I don't even think I would do that personally.
Yeah. Listen, I think there's so many different ways that this NFL draft could play out for the Giants. They might be picking number 3 overall and have the option to take Carter. They might be picking number 1 overall when it's all said and done. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting. And again, so many storylines coming out as we get closer to the NFL scouting combine. And that's when things are just going to be ramped up to another level because all the GMs are going to be in one location once again, like they were for the Senior Bowl, scouting the prospects and talking about potential trades and also meeting with agents to potentially get free agent signings rolling in just a couple weeks here when the NFL scouting combine kicks off. So it's going to be really fun. We are super excited to continue to talk about all of these topics and many more about the New York Giants all offseason long right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.